I would like to invite our next set of speakers, Jinesh Sumedhan, Senior Vice President, Tarento Technologies, and Rangabashyam, Engineering Manager, Tarento Technologies. Over to you, Jinesh.
Thank you. I'll just be sharing my screen now. Right, thanks, Monica. Please let me know if my screen is visible. I hope my screen is visible now.
No, Jinesh, I think screen is not visible.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Is it visible now?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start. So we've heard from Krishna and Railu on the power of interactions and how that is going to help empower the learners and instructors. So we're going to take that to the next level by bringing in, moving from the consumption only aspect into solutioning aspect as well. So we will look at two parts. So there are 4 tools that was broadly covered, and me and Ranga will speak about the 2 parts in specific. They are, one is the discuss space. This is basically the discussion forums and how do you engage with your participants, understand their queries and so on. And then there is events, which are more like the live events or webinars and things like that. So let me give a particular construct. So there's a 70-20-10 learning model. What this essentially brings in is that it's only 10% of the learning that usually comes from a formal learning practices, such as the trainings, in-classroom experiences, the participation in workshops, and things like that. The rest, 20%, is actually an informal learning. It actually comes through your interaction with your peers, your colleagues. You actually learn from others. And then we have like a 70% learning, which is the experiential learning aspect of it. This is what you gain while on the job, the experience on your day-to-day work. And the 70% is called as experiential learning, whereas the 20% is called as the social learning. So these tend to directly empower this 20% informal learning by helping you engage in discussions, participating in collaborative events and things like that. The 70% will be fast tracked. The system enables you to fast track the 70% learning experience, again, using similar tools. So like the chatbots that was mentioned earlier, or through the same discussion spaces and the events as well. So with that, we will be focusing on the discuss and the event space today. We will start with the discuss space now. Okay, so the discussion space, it is focused mostly around addressing the query resolutions, discussions about specific topics. So as a participant, you can engage in these questions. We'll see what kind of workflows are possible with this in the coming slide. The platform do have inherent intelligence to contextualize things and enable the right level of discovery. And as we discussed, it is intended to promote the 20% peer learning aspect and also fast track the 70% of the experiential learning aspect. So let's see what are the workflows that are possible. When a user, a learner, comes onto the discuss space, he comes in with a particular question or an intent to know more about a particular topic. So he starts by exploring the existing discussions. There are a lot of topics which are organized in various means. So you can explore those topics or search and find one. He can also find related discussions to that topic. And he can also look at the questions that are being asked there and see the answers. He can also, provided he does not get the complete satisfaction, does not get the point answer, he can start a new discussion. He can see what categories are available. He can tag them, categorize them so that there is right level of discovery possible. And people can come and respond to that. Conversations are developed around that. It need not be like a question and answer. It can be a series of question, response to that, and so on. So it develops into a thread until it reaches a resolution. So in the process, you can also engage with people. So you identify that, like, who are people who are experts in this domain. You can connect with them by looking at their profile, understanding their background, and you want to reach out to them, you can do that. So this is specifically done as part of the network space, which we will cover in a future session. But this is there's a continuity from here. So you get an answer, you are more knowledgeable, but at the same time, you can actually extend this further to have more direct mentoring aspects by connecting to people as well. So that's broadly the construct of the concept of discussion and how it helps in a learning context. This is bringing in the power of interactions. Now, let's look at some specifics. What are the key capabilities on the platform? So we've listed the most important aspects that we have now, and this is a capability that we're currently actively working on, so more will get added to this. So let's look at them one by one. On the left side, we've listed the features, and we'll also show you approximately how does it look in market implementations. And Sunbird being open source platform, anyone, any adopter can actually pick it up and implement them and customize and tailor it for their use cases. So what we are showing here is a reference. So the first capability is the ability to organize contents. And here we have a strict taxonomy-based organization using categories, and a more flexible tagging using the tags. And you can explore either by going into a specific category and finding out the right content, or picking up a simple tag. In addition, you can also simply do a search, and that will also give you the relevant threads around it. There's a leaderboard that is there to promote a gamified experience and therefore drive higher engagement. So the leaderboard would contain, list out people who are actively engaging, contributing to query resolutions and active participants across various parameters and certain time periods, so that there is more people who can actually come up there. And this is in some ways, you can also use this feature and extend this further to drive further engagement on your platform. You can also reward them in various forms, depending on like what your platform is into. And these rewards could be like very specific to each implementation. Okay, then we have related threads. So while a user is on a particular question and he's looking at the answers for that question, that may not be exactly 100% match to, or might not answer his query 100%. And there is this related discussions, which is a smart way of identifying the discussions that are relevant to that particular thread. That gets listed right alongside this thread. So users can quickly get a glance of that. So instead of they coming in searching for something and get something close to it, but not exactly that, and then dropping off from that point, they can actually continue the thread by actually looking at a relevant related discussion, jumping into that thread and continuing the experience right there. This is another capability where we have the ability to drive further engagement and also kind of, in a way, crowdsource the qualitative improvement of the discussions. So we have capabilities like upvote, downvote in the views. There's also something that we're working on where the person who asked the question could also accept the answer. So that would be another factor that will be coming up. So while upvoting content or a particular answer, it would actually promote, it's an indication that the quality of the answer is relatively high. Likewise, any relevant responses will get downvoted by the participants, and their relevance goes down. And that would actually help us automatically maintain the quality of the platform capability. And much more powerful capabilities, basically the embeddable snippets. And this is extremely useful for the front-end implementations, where it gives you the ability to plug in discussions in various contexts. So, for example, I have a learning content, and I want to have a discussion around that. So you can plug in snippet there, you can add it there, and right away have a discussion around that learning content. Likewise, we'll see when we go into the discuss the event that is happening, and you want to have the ability to have discussions around that event, or a teacher is running a live and she wants to enable a discussion capability, or you have a workshop and then you want to have a discussion around that. So you can embed the discussions in specific context easily. So there's a significant reusability of the tech capability that is built in, and you get all the features related to it. So the ability to plug in context is powerful, and it gives a lot of flexibility to front communications, especially. Moving on. When you create a new discussion, how do we ensure? Because this is one of the potential problems where you end up with a lot of duplicates. There is a question that is already answered. How do you ensure that people doesn't post duplicates? So when a new question is getting created, there's an AI engine that constantly looks at what is that you're trying to ask, and then brings up the discussions that are already there on the platform. And this is right in context. So as you can actually see this getting filtered. And when the author of the question, he sees these similar discussion, he can actually identify that, oh, this is exactly something that I am trying to ask. The question, the thread is already there, so why not let me just jump into it and then see if I have the answer. So if he has the answer, he does not have to ask that again. So that helps us avoid duplicates on the platform and therefore keep the quality of the engagement higher. And moving on, we have new capability. This is something that we are currently working on. So this will come up in the new versions. Is the ability to have suggested tags. So what this means is as you post your question, you want that question to be visible to the relevant audience so that there's more people coming and responding and engaging with the content. It is important that for the right level of reach, you are actually adding the correct tags to it. It also helps in the discovery aspects. So AI would actually read the content and put appropriate there. So this helps the user avoid manually typing and helps fast track the simplicity. Click on the suggested tag and he has the ability to add more as he requires. And then he goes on and posts. Okay. The next capability or the feature is the ability to connect and link to profiles. So you see this nice discussion thread happening. There's a question, people are responding to it. We want people to have like a very engaging experience and also able to take it further beyond just getting an answer and going out. And that is where the ability to understand and connect to people, seek more closer opportunities to maybe mentor them, etc. So they can actually see the profile of the user by hovering on their name. And a hover card pops up with minimal relevant information in context. And if that seems to be interesting, they can find more details by clicking on that profile and then jumps into that person's profile and understand more, and they can get connected. So this, like I said, this will come in the network aspect, which we are not covering in detail today. That's for another day. And similarly, we have different ways of discovering content. So right now there are 3 levels of 3 ways in which the content is visible to a user. So when you are in the all discussions thread, and this is where you land by default, you see the recent discussions, the latest questions are coming up there. But you can also view by the most popular contents, which are the ones that are more active and popular on the platform. And you also have this ability to go and join or subscribe to certain categories. And any discussions which are tagged to that category would actually come up in the watching list. So that helps you if you're interested in a particular area or a topic, especially you're somebody who wants to help resolve queries. And you're an expert in a particular domain, you go and tag that domain, you subscribe to that domain. And then you can see all the queries related to that appear. You go in and start looking at it and then responding to the ones for you. So these are broadly the capabilities of the discuss space. Now we'll jump into the events space. So events is yet another dimension through which we can leverage the power of interactions. And this is especially very important for patients and people on the learning in the tech space. More often, we have a series of learning events. So it can be a multi-day conference or a multi-session workshop that is happening, live synchronous learning or a live classroom event that's happening, or a general address. So there are multiple types of events that can take the learning experience to the next level. So how do we enable such possibility through Sunbird? And this is where events comes in. And here we have taken a multi-stage approach where we want to leverage the existing infrastructure that is out there. So an entity might be using a certain software for hosting their sessions or classrooms. So how do we leverage that and not forcing another software onto it? So that is the first phase where you are able to set up a hosting on your preferred software platform. And then you can set up the event and publish that event on Sunbird, make it available for the Sunbird audience. And you will get a lot of additional details once you set it up on Sunbird. But the actual content itself or the actual conference itself will be hosted through the external platform. That's part one. And then part two, we are actually going into a service provider interface-based approach where there is a standardized SPI that is created. And any platform that wants to integrate with Sunbird can actually leverage that and then directly integrate, which allows us to create and host conferences directly through the platform. So this is second phase. This is where we are right now. And we are also planning to have more direct integration with an existing open source conference provider like Jitsi or Big Blue Button, which can come out of the box in the future. So this is where we are right now. Now let's look at what are the specifics. So one aspect of events is there are different types of events that can be added. So when you host an event, you can classify them into different categories. And these are some of the examples. That can be an online broadcast, can be a webinar, can be a workshop, can be a Ask Me Anything session that can be hosted, and can be a lot more, can be a synchronous learning, a classroom session, etc. Likewise, within the event, it has some mandatory attributes, and you have a lot more flexible attribute. The event title, the event date and time, the duration or the end date or time, what's the status of the event, what type of event it is, and who's the provider, etc. And then there's an event set construct through which you can create a collection of these. For example, you have a multi-day event or a multi-session workshop. You can then use the event set, and it has this ability to also create recurring events as well. So this is broadly the specific technical attribute, and like Ranga will actually talk more about this in the architecture part of the session. Let's dive into key features. Again, Sunbird being a completely open source platform, the implementers can take and customize it to their needs. And we are actually showing one of the reference implementations and what is possible. So the first one is the event listing. So this is a place where you can actually see all the events that are upcoming. You can also optionally have a switch where you want to see the past events, and you can actually flip that and then go and see the past events as well. Within the space, the current day's events are highlighted. So today's event gets much higher visibility. And for the live events also, it gets a live badging so that you can simply jump in if it is already live. And you get a featured events category right after that. So certain events which is of higher importance can be promoted. And when you apply the featured event label to it, it gets into this high visibility space. A user who wants to participate, he can actually come in and click join. And there are both events where you would require registration, or some certain things that are open to everybody. You can simply click, and one click you can join. Following that would be the joined by me event. So the events that I've already joined would be visible right after that. And these are configurable. So if you do not want joined by me appearing here, you want to show that somewhere else, that is possible because this is totally based on how you want to use these capabilities. And after that is where you will see all the upcoming events. So let's see. This is, for example, the capability when you actually go inside an event. There are a few more capabilities like the event details. You can also view the participant. We'll show that. There is capability to have a preview of an event or a trailer. So you have a big event coming up and you want more people to participate and join. You can have a short recording of that event or a small trailer giving some exciting information of the event. You can host that. That would be more people and join. There are also to kind of have, like we discussed earlier, the M can be used inside. And you also have this ability to extract analytics around these events. So let's see how these looks like. So this is when you actually go inside of the event. This is currently, you can actually see the description of the event. You can see who are the people who are in the event, what's the agenda of the event, details, the event type, and so on. Jump to the event. If it's an upcoming event, you will have a join button instead. This is how an event description in detail looks like. And you have a tab where you can embed the discussions. So as the event is going on, you have a question, you can post that questions there. Other people can post their questions. The host or anybody who knows the answer, they can respond to it and engage in a conversation. Likewise, you can also get a view of the participants who's participating. You can actually hover and get the details about that person, so on. Similarly, once the event is over, you also get the analytics related to that event, participation metrics, how was engagement board, so on. Again, these are configurable in the sense like the visibility control, what data be the home of them are configured, but the abilities. Probably the set that when it comes to events. So that comes to the end of the functional side of both the disk space and event space. We'll Ranga, he'll take over and he'll take us to the technical and the architecture aspects of how this is done. Thank you. Ranga, over to you.
Thank you, Jinesh. Let me know if you see the screen. Let me know if you're able to see the screen. Am I audible?
Yes, Ranga. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think we just crossed the noon, so I think good afternoon, everyone. So it's been good discussion till now that has been happening with Railu, Krishna, and Jinesh providing good overview of it, and hopefully I should be able to provide more tech details of both the discussion implementation as well as the events implementation. Just to set the context, some of these features or roadmap items, as well as some of them are already developed items. So we'll have mix of both. So let's have a detailed discussion about it. As we have said earlier, so a discussion forum is basically can be done on context driven, like it's a groups or a collection or a content. Or you can have an open discussion spaces as well that is actually open to a generic topic and not tied to any context. You can also have types of discussion typically include broadcasts, discussion between groups, and also one-on-one chats. So we are looking at mostly broadcasts and discussions as part of this event, and we can look at the one-on-one chats as a future enhancement, something that we're looking at. If you look at a discussion happening on a platform, right, so there are multiple levels or hierarchies of discussion that happen on the platform. So typically, what we see is a discussion that's happening on the platform level, which is typically announcements that happens, or let's say an open forum discussions, or we can use this discussion forums to receive feedback from the users as well, right? Take for example, how the platform is performing, is there any feature request that we need. So it's actually for all the users of the platform, we can enable a discussion medium for people to discuss and communicate with each other. At the next level, we are looking at a tenant specific discussion, which means that the scope of discussions and the scope of users who are forming those discussions are restricted to the tenant level, right? For example, in the case of education, you can have a state being a tenant, and people or teachers and students belonging to that tenant might be having a discussion specific to those tenants. This is typically, so there are multiple use cases. In the case of education use case, you're talking about discussion at the schools and the tenant level. In the case of adult learning, you're talking about an organization or a department or that level, where we can have announcements for those at that level, as well as in some cases we can use job postings, so we can leverage the same discussions forum to have a job posting, and people can start to apply for that as well. The third level of drill down of discussion is basically the context driven discussion, right? There's a context driven discussions. We are looking at the context can be any trackable or embeddable object on the platform. Currently we are looking at groups, content, and batch, and events as well. So the whole architecture has been modeled in such a way that we should be able to enable a discussion on whatever context that the adapter wants to implement for. So in some cases we have seen adapters don't want a context-based discussion, they just want an open forum discussion, free for all, which means that it's at the tenant level. Some cases we have seen where they want more granular control on how the context-based discussion needs to be enabled as well. Take for example, we have seen within the context itself where people want to restrict access to some particular categories as well. So that level of granularity is something that we are able to provide in the discussion form design and architecture as well. So these are the three levels of hierarchies, if you want to call it, on the discussions types or context-based discussion that can happen on the platform. Coming to the discussion forum roles or actors, if you want to call it, typically the user is a person who is actually a learner or student who is actually on the platform performing those various tasks, like posting of discussion. He can reply and tag and respond. So this is actually a typical action that's being performed by the end user. So the next level, or if you want to call it the next grade, if you want to call it, or next level, if you want to call it, it's actually a mentor, right? The mentor is actually kind of a user or a member who is actually managing a group of learners. They can be a batch, they can be a group. So this role or this user is actually ability to create a forum and manage user permissions for the batch. This is at the mentor level. You also have a different set of roles for a group admin. When I say group admin, we are talking about kind of bigger than a mentor. Mentor is just for the batch and also, but we are looking at group admin being, as we have seen in today's morning session, where we can create groups and activities. You can have discussion forum within the groups, and group admin can manage that whole set of users and what's happening on the discussion forums, and he should be able to manage the discussion there. A moderator is a person who is actually kind of we can define him even at the tenant level, or he can be defined at a group level, or he can be defined at a context level, right? You can have multiple levels of moderators, but typically the role of a moderator is to moderate the content that's happening moderate the discussion that's happening on the platform, to make sure that the discussion that's happening is kind of sane and not irresponsible discussion that happens, and have the ability to delete the content, flag the content, and also if there is some users who are not following the rules, you should be able to remove the users from the discussion forum as well, right? And finally, we have an admin who is actually managing the whole discussion. Right? So this is typically a super administrator who can manage the discussions at high level. So when we are discussing about how to go implementing this use cases that we are talking about open discussions, we are talking about context-based discussions, we are talking about security, fine-grained access, everything, right? So we had a list of factors that we evaluated to decide or to see whether we can do a build or an open source version. And the factor that we evaluated was basically to make sure that the choice that we make are actually tech stack is actually future ready, which means that we are not looking at old tech stack that's been running for ages, but we're looking at a futuristic tech stack. And anything that we build has to be a performance and scale. So we are looking at India scale ability. So as you think of a scenario where you have a 1 million content on the platform and you want to enable discussion on those content, which means that you're looking at a 1 million categories that's being created, and each content can have batches. So we're looking at millions and millions of categories and discussions that's happening. So obviously we need to have a system that can scale, and also security is of utmost concern. So we are looking at a lot of security compliance as well. And the major point or major feature that we are expecting was a headless capability, right? We want to have the adapters to be able to take the UI and have their own feel of the UI within the embedded discussions, right? So that feature is actually kind of available only in the case of headless scenarios. And fine-grained access, which means that, as I was telling earlier, right, you might have a discussion that can happen within a small set of groups, which means that whatever that's happening in that group is visible to only to that group. We don't want folks outside of those groups to have access to those discussions. So which means that every category or every context has to be fine-grained access, has to be enabled. And we also, obviously we did have load tested, and we did some load testing, and we have chosen the NodeBB discussion as the backend engine that powers the discussion forum for Sunbird. So when we started designing this, we were looking at a multi-layered approach. So basically we have the UI layer, and the same principle that we have been following is basically externalize and generalize the whole implementation. So each layer that we see right now can be embeddable or can be customized to different adapters use cases, right? So we have the Angular UI that's built on Angular, and this is actually an Angular library that we have built. And you can embed this library in any Angular application that you want, which means that not just Sunbird, you can take this library and start embedding your application to if you want to enable discussion forums, right? And the library has been built in such a way that it consists of a lot of widgets, and each widget is context aware, which means that it is able to load the data depending on the context that which it is being invoked upon. For example, you can have a context for a group, you can have a context for a batch, you can have a context for an events. So the widget is same, but the data that gets loaded is actually depending on where the widget is embedded or where the UI is embedded, right? So that's how we have built the UI for it. And the whole objective middlewares to make sure that we abstract the implementation of the backend discussion forum that's happening. So some of the specifics of the NodeBB requirement is being handled by middleware, and what it gives us, it also gives us the flexibility to leverage the backend to the full, right? We might implement some caching, we might implement some session management. So everything is being handled in the middleware, and this is actually written in a Node.js application. The backend is both Sunbird and NodeBB, and it has been designed in such a way that these are decoupled. So you can take just the discussion from a NodeBB and start to implement it for non-Sunbird use cases as well. Right? So that's how it has been designed and decoupled. And we use NodeBB purely as a headless system, including Sunbird. The APIs, the Sunbird APIs are being used as headless systems, and we have developed some plugins in NodeBB to make sure that it is integrated with Sunbird, so that there is ease of data flow between these two systems. So just to give a high-level overview of the various kinds of actors and objects that we have in Sunbird and how each of them are correlated to NodeBB. In Sunbird, we actually have a tenant, which is at the root or concept. Each tenant has got context objects. When I say context objects, we are talking about groups, scores, events, and in some cases, you can call a context also an open discussion as a context as well. So treat it as a context, right? And each context has actors associated to those contexts. For example, if it is a group, then we have a list of users and mentors and moderators. If it is a course, you have a batch users, and so there are actors who are associated to the context object. The same is being modeled for NodeBB is like you have tenant is treated as a category, and each context is treated as a subcategory within the NodeBB, and we are having groups which is actually associated to the list of users and permission for those users, right? So how these two talk to each other is through the topic. How the topic is where the relationship between the NodeBB and your context is being integrated, where a topic is associated to the context object and it belongs to a subcategory, and each topic can be downvoted, replied, and upvoted, right? So you have an action that is happening on the topic. So the topic is where it unites the Sunbird and NodeBB and make sure that we are able to deliver a seamless node discussion delivery to the end users. Coming to the UI part of it, as we have seen, the whole approach of Sunbird is to make sure that we are generalizing and externalizing the whole framework. So you have a UI library that is actually built on Angular 8. So the UI library has got UI routes and components and the discussion service. This actually talks to the client services library. That's again a part of Sunbird stack, where we have the APIs that are exposed to for the UI to consume, and we have a NodeBB middleware that actually talks to the NodeBB plugin to the backend. So how it has been designed is basically to actually embed this UI library in whatever portal or mobile app that the user or adapter wants to embed on. So this library can or will behave based on the context in which it is embedded, and also the theme of the library can be customized, is parameterized to make sure that wherever it is being embedded, the widget or the library behaves accordingly. So just to give an example of how the library has been built, so basically this is your landing page for all discussion. I'm just taking a small example right now to show how we are building a lot of widgets for this. So if you look at it, this is the landing page, which is actually a combination of widgets, right? So each widget is an independent entity by itself, where you see the all discussion. The left menu is actually kind of a widget by itself, and it is the list of items within the menu are configuration driven, and depending on the context that is being loaded, the menu items will also change. The start discussion is again a small widget that is embedded in the page. You also have trending tags. This is again a widget that actually goes to the backend and figures out the trending tags that's happening on the platform. And you also have a card layout for viewing the preview of the discussion. So this again a small widget that actually showcases the words, views, and so. And ultimately, we have a full page being embedded or being, I would say, stitched together through multiple widgets, and we are able to deliver a seamless experience. So we can embed this widget or library depend wherever that you want. So now this same widget can be embedded into a content, then the discussion related to the content will show up, right? So the trending tags depending on the context will show up. So every widget is context aware, and every data that you see is context aware. And we have seen that the telemetry is the main child or brain behind the whole Sunbird side, and we have a discussion library UI generates telemetry, middleware also generates telemetry, and ultimately we are able to generate metrics on trending topics, tags, and most of all. So this is actually kind of a data product that will generate the metrics for. So these are the Git repos that are available for consumption by the adapters. You have the UI that's a Angular library, and you have the middleware that talks to backend. So this is on the discussion front. Now let's go to events. As explained by Jinesh, we are in a multi-phased approach on the events design. So, but what we have seen, right, or what we have started to do is to make sure that the backend engine is kind of robust, and we are modeling the engine, backend engine based on future requirements as well. So, as we see it, events are actually classified into three components. You actually have the event that is happening, which is actually kind of a webinar, a meeting, or a classroom, or ask me anything. So this is actually an event the actual event that happens. And we have the provider. These are the guys who are actually hosting the event or providing services for hosting the event. These are typically like Zoom, Meet, Teams, bbWidget, or Jitsi, or any other. There are umpteen number of providers in the market. So we are just classifying the top 5 here. And you have the content that is related to the events, which means that you can have a preview videos, you can have pre-readings, you can have post presentations and meeting notes. So these are the 3 different contexts or different objects that we are looking at to manage. And we have started to define the events and the content integrations. And we are, as Jinesh said, we are looking at a SPA-based integration for the providers. So how it has been implemented is basically modeled based on collection frameworks. So we have extended collection schema, and we have also used the same enrollment to a course as we have extended the same concept of enrollment to a course to track the registration. And for tracking progress, we have actually removed the batch dependency for tracking, which makes us to track based on a non-batch mode tracking. So that's also possible, right? So at a high level, we are looking at an event. Event is associated with the content, and event set is actually a collection of events. And the event set, each event and event set are trackable and enrollable, and progress can be updated. So you can have attendance or trackable at the event set collection as well, or event as well. So that's how it has been modeled. And from an enrollment perspective, the user can enroll to event or event set. As I told you earlier, we are actually implicitly enabling the batch in the backend, and we are working on. We are using that to for now, and we are looking at removing the batch dependency for trackable collections down the line. And we also have enrollment, which means the user has registered, and also we also have during the event participation, how the user is interacting with the event. So that's being tracked at the content state API. A sample set of events is event meta is actually listed below. So here, so you see the event name, registration, start date, mandate, and you also have an ability to define the provider information as well. So this is for future enhancements where we are looking at integrating with third-party service providers. So we have defined the meta in such a way that generic in such a way that tomorrow any service provider can be onboarded, and we should be able to use the APIs of the service providers to make sure that we get the data back from the events. We also have an event set, which is actually a collection of events. So there is a schedule of events. So it's a recurring or non-recurring when we have an event set object defined here. As we have been telling, we are actually embarking on this journey, and we would require the ecosystem support in implementing SPI based implementations, which means that we are expecting it's a very big vast landscape, and we are expecting the ecosystem to help us to support on implementing other integrations as well, like Jitsi or Big Blue Button. And future enhancements will be to embed the UI of the service providers to offer a seamless experience. I think that's the future roadmap that we are having. I think we are almost out of time for the slide delay, but yeah. So thanks for the opportunity to overview of the discussion and events. Over to yeah.
Ranga, we have time for a couple of questions. Ranga, this question is for you. Why Node bbWidget and not other providers like Discuss?
Yeah, we did evaluate a couple of other providers as well. So Discussor was one of those things, and based on the tech stack and based on the granular fine-grained approach and the headless abilities, I think that's when we arrived at the Node BB as the condition that, yeah.
Let's say an adopter is already using an existing forum. Can we integrate that with Sunbird?
Yes, so that's how the whole UI, that's the separation of your layers, right? So that's why I said we have the UI is separated out, and that's context aware. The middleware is also separated out, that's also context aware, and we have NodeBeep at the backend. So tomorrow, let's say an adapter is using an existing Discuss or either plugin in either providers, then we should be able to customize the middleware, and that should seamlessly flow into the new discussion hubs. Yes.
How do we achieve moderation when discussion happens at scale?
Yeah, this is something that we are actually looking to solve, right? So basically, when you're looking at a moderation at a scale of, let's say, India scale moderation, which means that it's practically not possible to do a human-based moderation. So we are looking at a lot of AI-driven, ML-driven algorithms to actually flag a content. That's what we're looking at. Our approach has always been to the tech to enable the users to decide rather than the tech deciding by itself. So that's how we are looking at. But that's in progress right now. Yeah, we're looking at AML based moderation scale. Yes.
Jinesh, the question is.
Can I add to that? So yeah, I can add to that. So there are configurations that enables what level of moderation. So for example, for a certain kind of discussion, we might want to turn on moderation versus certain other kind of discussion. We want it to be free flow, need not be moderated. That is one approach. The second configurability is basically about, do you want a pre-moderation or a post-moderation? So the pre-moderation enabled contents. So you post something and it waits for a moderation to be completed before it appears on the platform. Versus a post-moderation is like the content goes live, and after it is live, there can be flagging. So somebody flags, it actually comes to people who are responsible for moderation. So there are organizations where they would want to set up a human moderation board, and they can actually take a look at it. The other level is depending on the severity. So all contents on the platform, we have a text profanity engine, which actually checks the level of acceptability of the text that goes in. So that content is then evaluated, and if it is possibly, there's a light chance that there is something offensive, then it goes into the admin. If it is post-moderation enabled, it is immediately flagged to the admin. Versus you can also configure it in a way that if the profanity's probability is much higher, then it is blocked. It is not allowed to be published. And the admin can look at it and then decide to override. So all these combinations are possible when it comes to moderation. And as Ranga mentioned, this is currently under development, and we will actually release it version by version. So iteratively, you're going to see more capabilities on the moderation front.
Jinesh, the next question is for you. How can discussions and networking in the Sunbird platform help drive engagement?
Excellent. That's a good question. As we are saying, like we saw in Krishna's presentation, the interactions are very important. So when you are given a piece of content to read, I have a certain limited level of engagement. I'm mostly engaging with the machine, the tech platform. But humans are by design more naturally inclined to speak to other people. So this element actually comes in, and when we are enabling a discussion forum or an event where you get a lot more of these opportunities to interact and engage. So naturally it drives up the engagement aspects. Second, when you get acknowledgement, get feedback, that actually drives the conversations. So if somebody is asking you a question, or somebody responded to a question, or somebody is asking you something back, you naturally go and reply to it. So all these factors enables engagement. So what events and network and the discussion phase is actually doing to create more avenues for enabling such interactions, and they will drive further engagement.
The next question is, how do we ensure that the discussions happening in the platform are having relevant topics and we can avoid junk discussions?
Okay, so this broadly is done by two mechanisms. One is we have this upvoting and downvoting capability. So this is where we are leveraging humans or other participants to identify content which are not great. So those contents gets downvoted, and they are picked up by the AI, and it can use that for learning. So this essentially becomes some form of reinforcement learning, and we can enhance our model to automatically learn from these human inputs. That model can then be used to automatically identify content pieces which are similar. So it can automatically identify content pieces which are
I'm sorry, Jinesh.
Jinesh, your network is, I think,
I think we can close our last session for today. Thank you, Jinesh, when you join us, and thank you, Ranga.
Thank you.